And
yeah, thanks and welcome. I want to introduce the material today that's called Strata. It's a different part of the work. In many ways, Strata is almost the toolbox within which the tools can sit. And there are some training courses, particularly in a high school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, where the material was taught over some years and over some length, 3 terms. It wasn't a brief presentation, where the actual course, and the course there was called A Practical Psychology. Anyway, that course started at one point with Strata. So Strata almost can be a starting point because Strata does reflect and substantiate the breadth of the material. Of course, Strata literally includes politics and religion, as well as therapy and how do businesses succeed. Strata also has within it what we call evaluation strata, and in a sense, evaluation strata is the bottom line of this work. It's something we almost always go back to. To put it simply, and I'll expanding on it a bit more here, evaluation strata is evaluating situations and peoples and moments in history, moments in political history, moments in our personal lives, issues of, sex therapy or raising kids. We can almost always go back to evaluation strata, evaluating in terms of hurt and purpose. So in a sense, strata includes that bottom line, evaluation strata, and at the same time, it's the toolbox that contains and has a place for all the other tools. There's a diagram for this I don't have tonight, I will have next time. But maybe that was a little bit intentional tonight because I just don't want to make it too mechanical. Strata is straight Dave Pellin. He presented it in a very short bit of one lecture, and I've developed it into something that's much bigger than that. But in a sense, yeah, his particular originality is something I took off on, made solid, and then expanded. I think we can say that's been the history of it over all these years. I think Strata raised another issue, which I really would like to be part of the forum for myself sometime into the future. And that is how very different Pellin is from anything else. And that is something I need to explore because I want to get it clear and brief. I mean, I've touched on it in some places, like I touch on what has become, and this is only relatively recent, over the last 10 years, really. We're almost a basic strap line is the best way to heal is to contribute, and the best way to learn is to teach. I mean, that says a lot, and in a way that makes us different. But we are very different, and I need, and going ahead, we need a way to say that very simply. And saying things short and simple often takes me some decades to achieve. But I get there, and so now I will prove that point by presenting Strata. Strata literally has the aim of sort of covering everything. And that's why I used all those examples. And there are 7 strata. And they are all in a sense of equal importance. This is another one of David Pellin's particular takes on things. He didn't create hierarchies. He didn't create, you know, pyramids of needs or pyramids of importance. He essentially said, all the stuff's important. So there are these sort of 7 items, and they're all in a sense of equal importance. It's almost a metaphor to, you know, your founding fathers, which also had their own originality, particularly Jamie Madison, who was short, squeaky, very unimpressive. I think he was something like 4'11" or 5'1". And, you know, there's genius of originality. And he set up, you know, 5 elements of government: executive, legislature, and judiciary, and made them all equal. I mean, that is a simple thing. If you look at it, it's sheer, I'm not swearing, okay? Sheer freaking genius. They're all equal. There's not one more equal than the other. I think in a similar way, David Pellin put his 7 strata. They're all equal. I'll put them out there. You guys make of it what you will. The first of them is called social strata. And social strata is about issues of class, race, politics. And one of the motivations too, because I heard the really fruitful session you had this time last week. And one of the things I thought, yeah, you know, I've just got to present strata because it's in terms of what you talked about last week and what some of us are still talking about in different ways, degrees of obsession. In terms of contribution training and Pellin, strata is the best contribution we've got to make the political scene in many ways. So I thought, come on, put that out there. So the first one is social strata. And the second one is communication strata. Communication strata has issues of, communication strata in some ways is the simplest to define. It is issues of how well we communicate, do we know our messages, can we deliver them clearly, and can they be received? The third one is emotional strata. Emotional strata is all the stuff of therapy. It's emotional history. It's issues that we've had in our past that have crippled us or sustained us or given us a foundation to move on. It's our relationship with our parents, our authority figures, our best friends, our first boyfriend, marriages, yeah, all the stuff of therapy.
And the pendulum, right?
Yeah, I'm leaving the tools out for a minute.
Oh, okay, so
That's all right. But yeah, as Mary said, it's a pendulum. I want to just explain what each of them are and then come back and do the tools. Yeah, emotional strata is all the emotional stuff in our lives. Social strata is all the classes, sex, education, structures we are born into, okay? The fourth one is the center of them, and it's the one I've already mentioned, which is evaluation strata. In a sense, the strata sort of all feed into evaluation strata. It's the way I like to look at them. Strata, by the way, is a sort of long-term view of issues. It's a part of Pelham where we can really look at a long-term view of things. In a way, it's a map of who we are. So, what we've got on the table so far is social strata, communication strata, emotional strata, and evaluation strata. I'll just sketch in the other three quickly. There are 7 of them. And I think we'll spend this session just on the first 4. Because strata is the most complex part of Pelham. There's no question about that. The fifth, sixth, and seventh, the sixth strata is accomplishment strata, and accomplishment strata has issues in it. Are we good at getting tasks finished? Are we good at avoiding procrastination? Yeah, do we get stuff done? That's accomplishment strata. Perseverance strata, or as it has been called, perseverance strata at other times, is different than the others. It's about courage. It's about our ability to go through adversity. It's about our ability to pick ourselves up when we're down. And so that's the 6th of 7. The 7th of 7 is called awareness strata. And awareness strata is all about a higher power, God. What is that worldview? It can contain issues of, awareness strata is about belief. And some of us can have belief in God, or we might have belief in nature or about science, but a wider world. And this is for me, and I'm not saying for everyone, and we always say we've only got a tiny part of the whole truth, and strata's only a tiny part of the whole truth. But I think David Pelham makes a place for different parts of the human existence, but he doesn't come along and say you should regard this one as most important or that one as most important. What he does say, come back to evaluation strata, okay? So I'll keep, are there any questions before I go on? Because this is just getting some really definition.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And just let me know if you're about to get to this, please. But when you say strata, I'm thinking in terms of layers, and I'm wondering in what sense these things are layered.
My hesitation is sort of not really. The word is very much a jargon word in our work, okay? Is the word David Pellon used, and I've given up some of his words, but this word of his I've kept. So I think because the other, in a sense, what strata is about is 7 areas of life, okay? So it's really, it's a bit like authority. We're using the word in a really different way than it's usually used. Mary.
Having trouble with my unmute. One thing that might be a little difficult for people who haven't seen the diagrams is the way it's depicted is tall columns. I can really see how if you just hear the jargon word, you'd think laterally with one strata on top of one another. But the diagram is 7 columns. But this again is probably something you might come to later. But when Elizabeth asked her question, Peter, I thought, well, because of the elaboration later on of high and low strata, there is a way in which there's a horizontal evaluation.
Yeah,
as well.
there is. Yeah, there is. I guess as you can see, I stumbled a little bit in terms of answering it that way. I don't want to sort of stretch it as if, well, because I think it's just a different use of the word. I mean, he just used some words differently. Like what we call memory links, he called referrals. And no one anyway used that word the way he used it at all. And in a sense, the same thing is true of strata. So, you know, and as Mary, it makes a little more sense when you get in the concept of high and low, but mainly it's a jargon word that we use in a different way. Just the same as authority is. And there are 2 words of his that I have kept and not tried to change, partly because they work. So there is it's a bit of a shame because
Can I just say, Peter, I'm going to write the 7 things in the chat if anybody wants to go. Or what was number 3? Just the names, because it's 7 things is a lot to remember. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's absolutely great, Mary. And I do have diagrams that I don't have them here, and I apologize for that. And we'll have them next time. But partly I just want you to sort of get your head around the words and the concepts a bit tonight, and just stay with those first 4. But first, the basic structure, though, as Mary said, there are sort of 7 columns across the page like that. There are 7 strata, 7 areas of life, which is another way of looking at it. Probably a clearer way to look at it. But just a little moment of transparency. I could not bear to give up his word for areas of life and the sort of prosaic nature of it. So I just couldn't. My emotional attachment to David Pellon. So there's high strata, and high strata is when, is when we are contributing well, where we're happy, we're achieving things. High strata is when we're doing well. Low strata is when we're doing badly. Middle strata is where we all are most of the time. Social strata is the world we are born into and what we do with it. And the world we are born into a sex, a class, a nation. We are born into a set of values. We are born into a group in society that has wealth and opportunities, or we're born into a part of society that does not have wealth and opportunity. That's social strata. It's the world we're born into. All that stuff. To say quickly, you know, low social strata is prejudice, bigotry, not regarding anyone as valid except our group, the group we were born into. So just to repeat the definition, social strata is the world we're born into and then what we do with it. I have a complicated relationship to Australia, which is my roots. Quite really complicated, very happy childhood, loving a lot of it. And then, you know, I grew up with something called the White Australia policy. I mean, that was just accepted. That was just what the White Australia policy meant is the only immigrants to Australia were white people, European. I worked in the Australian civil service from 17 and a half to 24 when I went to university in the evening. Now, I worked with that immigration policy. It was just called the White Australia policy. So, and then the beauty of the country, anyway, I have a complex relationship to my roots, and that is in, and then I left. I've been back twice, literally. So that all lives in social strata, okay? All those issues. You know, someone born into a family, well, someone was born into a family where, you know, John Lewis was their grandfather. Someone else is born into a family where a leader of the Ku Klux Klan was their grandfather. That's social strata, all those issues. High social strata is being able to respect difference, enjoy it, almost love diversity, and have a healthy relationship with our own roots. So a great deal of politics lives in social strata. Mary.
I was just thinking when you were first talking about it, that, you know, the big kind of important thing in progressive politics is this word intersectionality. And it means, really, it means looking at social strata. It means looking at how, you know, where you have privilege and where you're disadvantaged and how that interconnects and what to do about it.
Yeah. And thanks. It's a really good point. The social strata, strata is a set of tools, and they're really complex. They're not simple. The diagram, when we get to that, is simple, but tonight I just want to sort of present the material. But they can be really, and it's a bit hard to get all across, but it can be really fun, and we'll get to a little bit of that tonight when you see the connections between the different strata. At this point, I just sort of want to get them across. So social strata is our roots. Therefore, in terms of Pelham tools, memory links are really important in social strata. And the way we have the strata material and the way memory links play a place there means we can have, as a school of thought and practice, something really significant to contribute to the relationship between politics and therapy. We've got a real clear place for it, because we're not reducing all our emotional intensities or religious blocks to our relationship between our mother and our father. That's emotional strata. We've got social strata, which is of equal importance. So low social strata is bigotry, narrowness. All the low strata have, and this is another word we're using in a jargon way, low strata generally is characterized by opinionation and hurt. And there's a certain part of low social strata that's, I know I'm right. I know I'm right. Rich people are just exploiting workers, and I know I'm right. Poor people are lazy. All the low social strata has got an I know quality and a narrowness in it. Moving across to communication strata, communication strata has all our material of listening in it. So in a way you can see strata as these sort of sections in the toolbox. So, memory links belongs in social strata. It will also belong in emotional strata in a minute. Communication strata is all that stuff about listening. Communication strata is, let me go back to social strata for a moment, just to recap. High social strata is being able to take in all the difference and take in all our own roots and do something that we make nourishing contributions and we find purpose. Low social strata is being hurtful to ourselves and to other people about our opinions. Most of us, yeah, Cynthia.
Well, one of the things that I noticed in politics, and I'm wondering if this is kind of your definition, like a certain group is very mocking of, and like I was thinking about the two candidates, one was very mocking about everything, about people, and one was very open and very, let's talk, and the speech, stop demonizing and stuff like that. Is that what kind of the low and high social strata?
Yeah, very much, yep. And then we go to communication, which has some interesting relations to social strata, and interesting relation to the point you just made. Communication strata, though, on a definitional level, is getting our messages across. Is that sort of simple? But to get our messages across, we have to know what our message is. We have to deliver it, and then it has to be received. That literally is communication strata. It's sort of fundamental to our interactions with other people. High communication strata is knowing what we want to say, saying it, and being heard over and over again. That's high communication strata. Low communication strata, again, it's got the quality of I know nobody will listen to me. So I'm not even going to try. That's low communication strata. Or I know I have better things to say to anyone else, so I will talk and not be interrupted. That is also low communication strata. Low communication strata is never answering a question directly. And low communication strata is certainly not being able to, what we call passive listening, really letting someone else in as if I didn't exist. My background, my values, my theories, my very clever mind, putting all that aside and just letting someone else in. So one of the things about low social strata is not listening and giving up. You know, the child or the teenager who won't communicate because I know I'll never be able to make a friend. You know, that's low communication strata. So in that instance, how can we delicately build this child up so they start communicating? But it's very useful to be able to say and separate out, okay, it's a communication problem. And we get, I'll just stay there, but in a moment we'll get to emotional strata and the link between emotional strata and communication strata, because that child who at this point won't communicate and giving up, there will be memory links around that, which come in from emotional strata, which is a reason for that. But at the moment, in communication strata, we're just concentrating on the communication. Middle level communication, which where most of us live, is, yeah, I can get across some of the time, and other times I blow it. Or I can listen to some people, but I can't listen to others. You know, that's middle strata. And there's something about being able to grasp what middle strata is, gets us into, yeah, I got good stuff. But, you know, sometimes I'm not so great. Or I've got all these problems, but yeah, hey, you know, my best friend really listens to me. You know, over and over again, my best friend listens to me. I can't get through to anyone else, but my best friend does. There's something about the strata material that you cannot use these tools. I make that statement quite emphatically without being in touch with your strengths. Because you can, as we get into it, okay, I've got that weakness, but by definition, I've got other things that are strong. It's a particular subtle power in this material. And of course, you can see the, yeah, cease.
Yeah, this is very interesting. Going back to some of the things we were talking about earlier, but I think this is part of what the US is kind of struggling with right now, is understanding their own strata in their family. And, you know, people are talking about they're digging back more and more into their family history and their great-grandfather and what they did, and understanding the impact of other situations. And we're starting to, I think, take some of our thoughts and beliefs out of the idea that this was something we came up with, but you know, that it's been kind of handed down and affected by all these different family and environmental. I think it would be really interesting. I know people are doing this now, but I think it's a good thing to encourage for people, you know, for me anyway.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because I agree. I was looking at my bookshelf, and there's a book called White Trash that I wanted to show, and that's, I mean, deliberately using a controversial title, but it's about, came about 3 or 4 years ago, really, really good history, how, you know, poor white people and the values they have and carry forward have been around 400 years, okay? And there needs to be an understanding of what all that history is. So just a moment, I agree with you completely about the really importance of that. I guess the bit we have here is that that work fits into this material, okay? Because that would be simply saying, regardless of what we do, or in terms of therapy, regardless of what all the therapists do, this stuff really deeply, we're not going to get anywhere. And I think the current situation is sort of saying that. You know, a little bit almost listening to hard feedback. You know, can we passive listen to the political opposition? And then, Mary.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that point that one of the very interesting things in the White People for Black Lives, and I believe some of Black Lives Matter as well, is that it rather, you know, when people come up with white guilt about white privilege, they say, no, what we're looking at is how racial injustice does not serve white people too. Obviously, in particular, the people at the bottom of the rung.
Yeah, and then in terms of, this is an interesting point, for me anyway. How if you take these issues, and much of how you can look at William Faulkner in terms of in psychodynamic terms, psychoanalytical terms, but you can sure as hell look at William Faulkner, which in those psychoanalytical terms are all emotional strata, which I will get to in a moment. But there's also a whole lot of stuff there with social strata. So, you know, the point of view of, you know, I spend time working in a prison, and the point of view that, you know, if you work in a prison, you're also a prisoner. If you're a slave owner, you're also trapped in that situation. So I think what you're saying, Cease, is I'm looking for the word, okay, but maybe I'll keep it simple. Such a very, very good idea for people to do that, to go under their own social strata. And then we would say, in terms of what we're looking at right now, and then how do you communicate that? You know, how do you communicate across the barriers that are set up by my limited social strata? And certainly, just to see one easy example, if someone's got a low social strata and compulsively makes sexist jokes, that is going to affect all their communication. Something is going to come across that is all about that. They might have great communication skills, but they can't resist those sexist jokes or asides. They're not even jokes some of the time, are they? So that's communication strata. I won't try and do 3 tonight. That was 4 tonight, but I will try and do 3. I won't talk about evaluation strata tonight, but I will talk about emotional strata. Emotional strata is the stuff those of us who work in the therapeutic world are all about. It's about, in Pelham, it's about the pendulum and memory links. High emotional strata is being able to take the pain and the trauma of our past and do something positive with it, through which we find purpose and make nourishing contributions. Just to repeat, on top of all the strata is purpose and nourishing contributions. across all the low strata is opinionation, narrowness, I know, that phrase, and hurt. So the top of strata is nourishing contributions. The bottom, low strata, is hurting ourselves and hurting other people. Middle emotional strata is we're still working on our stuff, right? To use Pellin words, I still got stuff to work on. I still got blind spots. I still got, places where my emotional past affects my present life and trips me up. But what, Mary?
Well, I just wanted to say, I think of all the people in the room, you're the only one who witnessed this, but there's no question that my emotional strata when I went to Pellin in the 70s was probably about as low as it could be, because my pendulum, dominated my life so much, and then the calluses around caring life force contributed. And, I just think it's an amazing tool for looking at change over time.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
the pendulum brought down my communication strata really low. And I would say, I don't know if I'm right, you see me from the outside, but I would say that communication and emotional strata, were doing pretty well now. I'm just discovering that because my communication strata is pretty good, I've got this talent for marketing that I didn't know I had. I am so excited underneath my self-restraint today because it's a huge bonus to discover that something I thought was going to be a really difficult drag full of rejected efforts is coming, like that. It's just because I love communicating with people. I see the opportunity, I reach out, I message them, I email them, and, I won't go on from the excitement, but it's paying off, like way quicker than I expected. Stuff's coming in response to that. So I think strata is complicated, but it's one of the really powerful things that Pellin has that you do not see anywhere else. You just don't see this.
Yeah, and when I said complicated, we can now make it clear and simple, and particularly when we have the diagrams and the learning cards.
I think the better word's complex, I think, because complicated kind of implies a tangle, and it's not tangled, it's really clear, but it is complex. That's what my preference was.
Yeah, and another C word, it's comprehensive. And maybe that's almost the best word. It's just very, very comprehensive. And that means it's a bit of a long study. You're right, I need to be, more assertive about it. It's just comprehensive. It covers a whole bunch. So I just like to stay with the three of those tonight, and we'll get back to others on Sunday, and we're going to stay with this material for a few weeks, because apart from anything else, for one, it's a good starting point for Pellin. We've proven that, and Anne Wright and I, she was the person who taught the course for 10 years in high school in Michigan. It was a full course in school. It wasn't a one-off presentation. And she included other things as well as Pellin, particularly theories of styles of learning and positive psychology. Putting that down a bit for the record. And that whole course of hers, which was, very well recognized at that high school in Ann Arbor, what's called apractical psychology. And I taught on it via Skype from England. The reason I'm putting it there, at a time in that course, we started with Strata. That was our starting point. And one of the particular characteristics of Palin is there's lots of different starting points. There doesn't have to be one. Someone could start with this, or it hasn't even been part of our work here at all. But someone could start with all our material around conflict, or someone could start with Strata. So, trying to keep it really clear, social strata is our roots and our values, and what we're doing with them today, and how what we're doing with them today relate back to the world we were born into. When we talk about social strata as how the world we were born into and what we've done with it, how it affects our life today. Communication strata is simply getting stuff across or not. Are we good at it or not? High communication strata is someone who's really good at communicating. Low communication strata is someone who's not good at communicating and won't accept it's possible to learn to communicate, and because of that hurts themselves and others. A lot of marriages bust up because communication busts up. Emotional strata is about, and communication strata is about levels of listening. Social strata is about memory links. Emotional strata is also about memory links. And emotional strata is the pendulum centrally. And what is our emotional past? And what have we done with it? So, would you like to say anything about that, Cease? All of that, adding to what you said earlier. Okay?
Not right now. Thanks.
Okay. Do you want to come in, Cynthia?
Yeah, this is really interesting, and I was just sort of thinking about this and how it related to my own life and stuff, and you know, communication has always been difficult for me. But it makes a lot of sense, and I was thinking about, like, in my own background, some of the difference between the social. I mean, I was raised in a house with, you know, two women, lesbians, and all the stuff that went around having to hide that so that one of them didn't lose their job or lose me. I mean, there was, you know, there was that fear all along. But then also the fact that there was also other things going on, like addiction and you know, things that are, you know, and I was thinking, oh, that's sort of the emotional. And I was thinking about how I would feel about, like, my family growing up, and I was always kind of proud, I mean, of what my mom did, and you know, working to raise me and going, but then, you know, I also feel a lot of upset about the other things that I don't want to really get too specific about. But so this anyways, I'm just going on, but this has been just listening has been very helpful to sort of put things in little boxes so that you can organize them and look at them and deal with them. This is great.
No, it's like that, and I just had an image. It's like strata, you know, because we can be really drawn into the strata we're not good at. But strata is like looking at the states we won and the states we lost, okay? It's very similar. Victoria, do you want to come in and why don't I have the strata card that you and I developed in Italy in 2012, okay?
Well, thank you for inviting me to come in. I just must say I'm so exhausted and over-Zoomed today. I think it's my 7th Zoom today, but I'm so proud also that I made it, because Strata is something very special for me. And I mean, in Palin materials, because like each time you present it, I think, oh, I know it. And then I think, no, wait a minute. There's so many different aspects of it. And it's like really amazing how, but I want to say today about the social strata, what I've experienced in the course of my life, how I can move in the social strata. I'm not fixed in it, even though, like you say, that's where you were born and your sex, it's obviously something, well, unless transgender or something you can change, but something that you are born into, you're born with, and yet it can be changed, like from the low strata and top. Thank you.
I wanted to say something about my husband, using the strata a bit like a map. It's like, there's no question he made by his 36 feature films, he made a wonderful contribution. And one of my chapters in the book is how he turned his very deep hurt into contribution, partly in his very first film. So he had, I don't know how this works really, I don't know the tool to this extent, but he had pretty high accomplishment strata. He went back and finished directing a film when he'd had to flight, got the news that his son had been killed in a car crash, and he had to go back to LA and arrange the cremation and deal with the lawsuit for the other 2 people that were killed, and go back and finish the film. And like, who can do that? It amazes me. And perseverance strata as well, in that sense. And but his whole career and his life was brought way down by his low communication and emotional strata. He had very bad pendulum swings. The book was motivated this book, just to show you it's real, it exists now. The book was motivated by a desire to say, hey, there is more to this man than the fact that he made films and he had a really bad temper and he screamed at people. Read the book to find out that that's why it's called The Man, the Myth, the movies. And but it's very interesting to see how highly relevant the strata tool is to the map of his life. And I feel quite sad when I'm saying it, that when I think what his contribution is and what it could have been if he'd had the right kind of help earlier in his life, and his communication and emotional strata could have been brought up a little bit. It's kind of a bit amazing to think what he could have done.
No, that's a good point, because what we get at strata over time is we really can pinpoint stuff. There's a lot of precision in the Pelham tools. We got that in the pendulum, we got that in the life forces, we got that in the triangle, and we got that with strata. They can say, yeah, that belongs there. Tamara, would you like to come in?
I feel like I'm comfortably just learning and sponging. I don't have any thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, this is sort of the funny awkwardness of, this is communication strata. The funny awkwardness, of calling on people so nobody's left out. And if we're all in the same room together, it'd be sort of simple. But so we're struggling with, Pelham is struggling with communication strata in the age of Zoom. Okay. Do you want to come in, Stacey?
Yeah, I was thinking about the communication strata, and I was a a speech communication major in college because I was shy. I wanted to learn how to talk to people and how to persuade them and, you know, to come around to my way of thinking. And,
Yeah.
and one of the definitions of communication was to make things common. So kind of define the middle ground and to make things common, make meaning common between the two people.
Yeah.
And that really,
Yeah.
and that kind of applies. You know, when you're high, when you have a high communication strata, you can make things common. You can make things known and
Yeah.
and communicated.
That's
all I got.
Yeah. Cease?
Thank you. I'm getting is how understanding the social strata helps us not only understand ourselves, but others, and also make room for maybe some compassion, not completely excusing behavior, but understanding it and how that got, like we're talking about the current president, that it helps to understand the background if I want to be able to understand better where he's coming from. Not that I'm in line with what he's coming from, but it does make somebody more, not just a cardboard figure for me to see how they, and not just for him, for many people to understand where that comes from. And we do that with our friends frequently, but not so much with political figures or other people that we interact with. And it just, I've been in and out of the hospital. So I've been in and out of talking with doctors, and it's been really interesting how that level of communication and that level of just being down at my level, as far as, you know, being able to see that I don't understand something and they're very compassionate versus other people who don't get that, it feels difficult to communicate with them because they're up at the very knowledgeable strata. So I think it helps me to understand this more deeply and take that in as I interact with people that I don't know very well.
Yeah. No, I think that's true. And I think just in terms of this material has got some real uses, and I'm glad I said the point of accuracy and precision, because with doctors, you could say, you know, learn to communicate, you know, you operate as if you didn't take that class in med school where you were taught about communication, and it has some precision there. Joe, do you want to come in? We'll get there.
Thank you. It's really lovely to be back after these 8 weeks away. It's been so interesting, and I particularly benefited from Cynthia's question, asking you about kind of what these strata look like. And Peter, I know you don't like the phrase, but calling it areas of life is actually very useful to me. And I was thinking that actually I would like to paint these areas of life, these clusters, and paint them 3 different colors, low, medium, and high, in terms of, you know, the intensity. So like if social strata was red, it would be pink, scarlet, and deep crimson, say, for high. So I've really benefited from having that visual idea. Thank you. Thinking about communication in the age of Zoom, I wanted to tell you something. I've been working with a touch therapist who has chosen to work with Zoom rather than in person. So what she does is you're on a Zoom together and you tell her where you want to be touched and how. And she
Wow.
mirrors it on herself, and then you do it back. So you're doing it mirroring her, responding to what you've asked for. And it is as powerful as being touched by this other person. It's the most extraordinary, I'm getting shivers down my body as I say it. It's the most extraordinary experience of connection. And I think it comes from her quite low strata of thinking when she was a kid that nobody would listen to her. And now she listens very well and can give me and others this important touch experience, which is so crucial for ending the isolation of the COVID period.
Oh, that's a great story. Thank you. Elizabeth, do you want to come in?
One thing I've been thinking is that it's a relief that there's something I can be better at by not knowing stuff. Or rather by admitting that I don't know. That's all I got for right now.
Okay. Nikki, do you want to come in?
Hi. Yeah, that's interesting. That just that remark from Elizabeth is the thing that's perked me up and made me go, yeah, that's right. Because I guess I've been taking it for granted. I've been struck by, just by all the way that you're teaching it, Peter. And it's like, yep, I know this, I know that. That sounds like low strata, but it's like, yeah, this is so familiar, even though it's a really complicated Pelham tool. But I think I must have really, there was a stage at which I really studied it a lot. So I'm like, oh yeah, and I haven't thought about it for a long time, but yeah, so sort of, so I was merely thinking that, how, you know, maybe more than the other tools, that it's like, yeah, I really get this remember this with my head really clearly. And so, and suddenly hearing Elizabeth's point about, you know, I just saw that aspect with fresh eyes, just all of a sudden, about, oh yeah, that's right, I remember now. It's good to I remember doing it as an exercise years ago, kind of thing, really working my way through it, each strata, and how I felt, where I was on each one. And I haven't given it a thought for years now, but maybe I should do that as an exercise again. That's all I'm thinking. Thank you.
Okay.
Peter, I'd just like to say that I just found that really, really helpful teaching. And I have learned Strata several times. I've not done it in depth on a London course, as far as I remember that one year I was there. But there's so many new points, and that was really, I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Let me just say a few more things about it and answer any questions. But if you really get into the strata material, it really can be fun. And if you don't mind me, Mary, using your example when you were in Pelham years ago, thank you. Yeah, okay, there's this part of you that was not strong, let me just say that. But immediately if you use strata, and this is material for Sunday, you know, but you know, this is someone who can, but just staying with the material I've got today, which is not bringing in the other four, okay? But, okay, you know, let's just say communication strata, a bit on the floor. I'm sorry, emotional strata, a bit on the floor. But, hey, this person can relate to all the other people who are in this program, who are from different countries and different backgrounds. So, you know, you sort of, and, you know, she communicates well. So you've got, let alone the others, which we'll get at. But so you're looking at someone's weak spot and you can't, and I've not come across anything like this before, but, you know, I'm totally biased, no question. But you can't use this tool without looking at someone's strength. You can't. You just can't. If you're doing that, it means you're sort of incompetent and haven't learnt it and don't know. Okay, so it does something about the whole difficulty in our field of work of it being problem oriented, coming off a long, very long history of the influence of the medical model. You know, the medical model is, you know, the doctor asks you, what's wrong with you? So here we've got a therapeutic model that theoretically and structurally breaks out of the medical model just because, and particularly when we get a diagram and saying to you, I don't know if you're at the sessions, Joe, when, you know, the little gadget I use for the life forces, okay? I mean, that was developed by someone who was on a course years ago, who was Mother Superior of a convent in, Nikki, what's the stop before Clapham North?
Stockwell.
Stockwell, thank you very much. You know, thanks, Nikki. Stockwell is in London. And she, you know, there was a convent there, and she was the Mother Superior. And she came up with that. So maybe you can come up with play with a diagram about strata. Yeah.
I'd be happy to mess around with one, Peter, and send you a copy and see how you'd like me to alter
Yeah,
it.
let's play around with it.
Yeah.
Because there is something about the Pelham tools that when you've got them clear, and if they appeal to you, and as I said before, you know, we don't all go to the same church, we don't all go on the same vacations, we don't all like the same music. So, you know, that cognitive material is not going to appeal to everyone, and that's fine. But if it appeals to you, it can be really fun to see, and the applications of it can be fun. I mean, I have no inside knowledge at all, but I would say that Joe Biden spent weeks in lockdown working on his communication strata. And working on it and working on it and working on it. And he changed it. And that's extraordinary. And he made a statement yesterday, I think it was, when he was asked about what did he think about what was going on. And he paused for a minute and he said, well, I would like to be tactful. And I don't think what he's doing is going to be good for his legacy. I mean, that was a stunning bit of communication strata. And, you know, this guy's, you know, he talks too much and he's a blowhard and, you know, he worked on his communication style. So relevance is okay.
And can I comment on that? Just,
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that, but I did see something else he said. I can't remember now what, but it blew my mind away that I didn't know what he communicated like before, but because it just so struck me, it's so opposite of what we've had, so opposite. And it's like, that's where he must have been coming from. Just how do I come in underneath and be real and not be horrible, but be clear and truthful, and deliver mind-blowing, simple clarity with no edge. That's amazing. What a different, I mean, what a sales pitch in a way, because it's such a relief. It's so opposite.
Yeah. And there's that side of it, but he did not have this natural skill. He got other natural skills. He's got natural skill to be empathetic, but to be coldly diplomatic and at the same time appear warm, briefly. He didn't have those skills. He learned them. You know, he learned them. Yeah. And I think that's one of the ways that the strata material can be fun, because you can sort of have a discussion. Oh, that belongs there, you know. Now, it wasn't any social strata. It was in his communication strata. It was quite, you know, you could imagine advisors who were talking to him of just, you know, Joe, it's this one problem you've got to work on. And you got the opportunity to work on it because you're locked down. Mary.
Well, I just wanted to add to that, am I going to forget my thought? Right, there's a political. I better mute myself. I had a really clear thought. Hold on.
Take your time.
I think it was a point about him and communication strata. Oh, yes, I know what it was. About reading the political landscape, about coming from a place where he insisted about being bipartisan. And he insisted about being moderate. And my personal position is, I agree with the progressive agenda, and I think it would have been a disaster to have a progressive candidate like Bernie Sanders. And when you just said what you said about how he communicated that, I thought that if there's any healing that can be done at all politically, it has to come from, could only come from a place of, I'm in a platform where I intend to talk to you Republicans, even if you are not going to talk to me, right? I'm going to do my best. And it's like the way he was so behind, and then the people heard him. I mean, you know, the people that voted for him heard him, and some of the people that wouldn't have voted for him heard him and said, we want that sanity and desire to communicate. And it's really a very amazing story, even before we know the sequel, even if everything's thwarted that he tries to do. It's just incredible, I think.
Okay, thank you. And just to sort of sum that up before we stop, you know, social strata is where the values lie. Making the right political calls and getting the timing right. That's all evaluation strata, which we'll be starting with on Sunday. But you have to be able to communicate it. You could have the other two and not have the communication skills. And that was where he was a bit until recently. He didn't quite have the communication skills. And it seems he's improved them. Oh, that's some of the sort of stuff you can do with strata. let's just finish there.
Peter, just 1 second
Yeah.
on a practical note. I forgot, or maybe didn't know that you were going to start with this today. And just to table this, I put in the newsletter what was previously said, which we were going to look at what tools to use at work to follow on from what tools to use at home. So I'm just saying that for future
Well, I'll
reference.
fold that into it next week. And I think we can say that without having our words or knowing anything about us, someone used the tools in the Biden campaign to say, Joe, it's communication, nothing else, you know, not writing policy, just communication, Joe. So that's an application, that's fulfilling the obligation, Mary. That's an application of the Pelham tools to work, okay? Okay, I'm Peter and I'm in Norfolk in England, and thank you all for coming. Nikki?
I'm Nikki, I'm in Wimbledon, thank you.
Cease?
East Tampa, Florida, where we're waiting for a hurricane to come in.
Ooh, good luck. Is Victoria?
She had to go, Peter.
Yeah, I thought so. Stacey?
You were unmuted just now, Stacey, and now you've muted yourself again. There you go.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay. Tamara?
I'm Tamara in Pasadena. I can't let this communication thing with Biden slip past without us saying what we know about him struggling with a stutter that was debilitating when he was a kid, and he could have gone down really fast if it hadn't been for his,
Yeah.
I think his mother, more than anyone else.
Yeah.
And it's just so obvious, communication, but I had OCD and I had like vocal tics and stuff when I was a kid. And I was also in film, and we hear this a lot, but the only time I didn't have OCD is when I was rehearsing, or, performing or memorizing lines. So I think that purpose really can help.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. To be frank, I'd forgotten about his stutter. Yeah. Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth from Eugene, Oregon. I'm very tired.
Thanks for coming. Cynthia?
I'm Cynthia in Kankakee, Illinois, and this is really good. I think I just think how much more useful this is than a lot of diagnostic and stuff like that. It's much more and labeling and stuff like that. This is really useful. I think it seems really useful. Sorry, I just was excited.
Thank you, Joe.
I'm Joe, I'm from Yorkshire, England. I'd like to say again how lovely it is to be back with you, and how lovely it is to be back with Pelin Ideas. I've been doing a course that really hasn't been adequate because it doesn't think in the useful Pelin ways that Peter's particularly heightened tonight. So thank you.
Okay. Mary, as we finish up.
Yeah, I'm Mary in sunny Rosarito Beach. And it was just great. I just loved it. This is what attracted me really early on, is the intellectual rigor of the tools. And I was very thirsty to know them in greater depth. And I love that you feel, oh my gosh, there's so much more to learn. I just love that about it. And I don't think that there are many places in life where you can feel that after 40 years of thinking about something, hearing about something. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thanks for coming, and I'll see you Sunday. Watch
See you
this
Sunday.
space, okay?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
bye everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye, everybody.